Okay, so we'll get started. So just we were waiting for the audience to join in. I think we have more than 400 people, so we can get started. So I will give a brief introduction about me and then we will get started. Thanks for joining today's session. Okay, fine. So myself, Raghu Prasad, I'm the subject matter expert at SkillUpRight. And a brief introduction about me. I have done my BE and MS, overall 28 years of experience. I'm into IT from last 21 years. I was a lecturer in engineering college for about 7 years. I worked in companies like Cisco, CSC, ICC group of companies, and then First Apex. I'm currently into corporate training and consultancy, and I work with various corporates and public sectors. So currently into online training, corporate training, and training for the individuals like you and at the academic institutions. And I started as a Java developer way back in 2000 and then worked all different technologies associated with Java. And later on, I got the opportunity to work with Python and then with the test automation, Internet of Things, machine learning and artificial intelligence. So many corporate customers in Bangalore and outside of Bangalore like IQV, IAS, ITC, Infotech, L&T, and many of the customers which are part of the educational institutions. So test automation is one of the important area. And these are the topics I would be covering in today's session. What is exactly test automation? And there are different tools available for test automation. Why should we select Selenium as the test automation tool? And what are the building blocks of Selenium? And how do we set up the environment for the Selenium? And how do we start running the Selenium scripts? And other aspects like various locators. So how do we locate the various elements of a form using ID, name, XPath, and CSS selectors, and then few sample programs and a use case. So this is the pretty much topic I would be covering in another 45 to 50 minutes. So I understand most of you are maybe into test automation or maybe into manual testing and you want to get into test automation, or maybe freshers who want to get into test automation, or maybe already into test automation and we want to know more about it. Maybe you are using a different tools. As you know, manual testing is where a person is sitting in front of the system and then he is running the test script, right? And here, when I say test automation, we will be talking about the test automation of the web application. So Selenium is typically used for automating the web application, right? So in case of the test automation, we would be using a different software other than the software which is used to develop the application to execute the test scripts. So here, why we have to go for the test automation is there are many times there are repetitive tasks which we wanted to test. Many times will be many things we wanted to do repeatedly. We wanted to test it out. And also there would be some of the what you can call it as critical use cases, which is very much essential for continuous delivery and continuous testing. So nowadays we are talking about the software development process like agile development. So where we would be developing the application in an iterative way. And the application, whatever we develop, we have to demonstrate it to a customer in a specified period of time. We call it as the sprint, right? So when you do like that, it is very much important. The testing as well as the development should go hand in hand. So maybe if the time of delivery or the every sprint, if it is 2 weeks or 3 weeks, so we should show something considerable to the end user at the end of it, right? So that is where the continuous delivery and continuous testing comes into picture, wherein which you may have to automate few of the things which would be high critical from the perspective of the business, and also some of the repetitive things. So that is where the test automation comes into picture. And when we say test automation, there are few things a company should consider, or as a end user should consider. So initially there will be investment in terms of the money, as well as in terms of the resources, and also in terms of the understanding the technology, right? And once we learn all those things, the final aim is to reduce the number of test cases which is run manually, and not to eliminate the manual testing. So there is a misconception that when we go for test automation, we will be doing all the testing using the automation only. But that may not be the case. Suppose when something is developed, at least once we have to do the manual testing. And it is not to eliminate the manual testing, but to reduce the number of test cases which we will execute manually, right? So in case of the manual testing, what we do typically, we start with the test plan. So we wanted to test the application, we will start with the test plan, and then start with the test cases. We will execute the test cases of test cases by manually sitting and then running it. And it may be functional testing, non-functional testing, or graphical user testing. Okay, there are functional testing is what at this point in time we are concentrating, or maybe the graphical user interface testing, and we are not concentrating at this point in time on the non-functional testing like security testing or like load testing and all those things. Same thing if we are using the automation, what we would be writing is we would be using a tool which would help us to automate the test cases. So we would be writing the test script and running the test script using the tool. And again, we would be basically performing here the functional testing, and to see that the expected result and the actual results are actually the matching. That's what we do, right? When we say testing. If it has failed, we are going to record it, or we are going to prepare the report and then send it back to the development team, and then they will again redo the development and then fix the issues, and then we are going to do the testing, right? So that is what we are going to do. So basically, why we wanted to do that, the automation testing? One is we have to ensure that all the positive scenarios and all the negative scenarios are covered. And then sometimes we have to work in an environment where we have the application which is multilingual, and also we have to test it on multi browsers, which takes a lot of time. If you are part of a continuous delivery and deployment. So in those cases also you can do the automation, because at the same time you can run the script on different browsers, different operating systems, or maybe if it is different languages, right? So that's what we would be doing. And it does not require the human intervention till the time we develop the script, and till the time if it's fine, and then we run it, and then you can put it in an automated way, even unattended. Maybe you can run the script overnight, and in the morning when you come back, the test report is ready. And also it increases the speed of test execution, and it helps in increasing the test coverage. And to certain extent, once we people repeatedly do the same thing in the manual testing, it becomes really boring, and then it's error prone. So in order to overcome these kind of things, we would be going for what is called as the test automation. Does it mean that we would be doing 100% test automation, or what are the factors we need to consider when we go for the test automation? So basically, like high risk business critical test cases. Say, for example, if you're working in an e-commerce company, so high risk business cases would be searching the product and then buying the product, right? And then generating the invoices and all, right? Payment. So these are all the high risk, and that we should consider for the test automation. And the things which have to be executed repetitively, that we have to consider, and maybe sometimes which are very tedious to perform manually, those kind of things, and also the one which are really time consuming. And the test cases, test automation is not suitable in terms, at least if the new system is designed and we have to at least execute it manually at least once, then only we can go for the test automation. And in some scenarios the requirements are changing quite often. Okay, so that may not be the suitable candidate for the automating. And also there are few scenarios, business use cases, which is executed on an ad hoc basis at least once in a while. So those kind of test cases also not considered. It's not good to consider those use cases for the automation. So we have to create a clear boundary or a clear scope when we are going for automation, which one to use, which one not to use, right? And now we have decided, like, okay, we wanted to go with the automation process. So what are the things we have to consider when we go for the automation? One is the first thing is the tool selection. So there are quite different varieties of tools available. Then which are the tools we have to consider for automating? So when we have to consider the test tool selection, again, we have to consider the what you can call it as the skill set of the available resources, and the skill upgradation, and the landscape, the overall landscape, what we wanted to do as part of this particular what you can call it as the vertical is concerned. And once we are done, we have to define the scope of automation. So initially you may start with automating few of the test scenarios. Okay, you have to clearly say what are the things we have to go for test automation, what is the clear scope. Then we have to plan. So plan for the execution, and then design and the development, like the way we do it for the development, in the sense application development, same way we have to do it for even for testing. How do we go about running this script? How do we prepare the script? And what kind of frameworks we will be using? What kind of approach we would be taking in order to design the test script? And then once that is done, then we go about executing the test script, right? We are go about executing the test script, and then we will be getting the result. And then we have to publish the result to the stakeholders, and as well as to the development team. If at all any issue is there, they will be fixing. And again, this process repeats. And very important thing is the maintenance, because when suppose we have created a test script, and if there is some changes in the application, the test script also needs to be updated, right? So that is what the maintenance part comes into picture. If there is some changes happening in the test script, the use cases, then we have to maintain the test script. So this is what exactly we have to follow when we say when we are getting into the automation test process, right? Hope this makes sense. So far just I started covering covering all these things. I think the session would be recorded. I think from our end, I think they would be sharing you. Okay, so let me continue. Hope you are able to get this so far. So the test tool selections, there are quite a lot different test tools are there, which is that and all we will see. The scope, already I spoke about the scope, and the designing, like designing and the development, and then the test execution, and then the maintenance. And also we would be considering different kinds of the framework when we get into the automation. So it would help us like across the different projects. So we can select the kind of the framework which we can be using in the test automation. So there is a consistency, and also there is a reusability of some of the code, and which would help us in good maintenance. And actually, once we decide what kind of tools we are going to do, and then once we get the hands-on and once we get the training, it would be helpful further to actually go with the process of automation and then start automating many of the test cases. So there are different kinds of framework we can use. One is called as the data-driven framework, keyword-driven framework, and then the modular automation framework, and then the hybrid automation framework. There are different frameworks. So data-driven framework is like when we wanted to test let us say I want to test a simple registration module. One way when we do manually, what we do is we have all those data, maybe we put it in an Excel sheet and take it from there, and then manually we feed all the data and then execute the test cases. In case of the data-driven automation test framework, where we would be, whatever the data we would be using in terms of the testing, we would be putting either in an Excel sheet or maybe in a CSV file, and we would be writing the script, and that script automatically picks the data, and then that data is picked up, and then the information is fed to the required form, and then it is automatically executed. So those kind of things we call it as the data driven automation framework. So in where is a lot of data information is involved in your application, and then we would be going with what is called as the data driven automation framework. And then there is something called keyword-driven automation framework, where it is more of a business-friendly thing, in the sense, suppose I want to open a browser, say I want to open a Chrome browser, then I can say open Chrome browser. So this is like a keyword. So not necessary a person should know too many things about the technical things or technical. Without that, also a business analyst may run few of the test cases. That is what we call it as the keyword approach. So there is something called Robo framework is there in the Python there, where we can use the keyword driven approach, or there are few other frameworks available which uses the keyword driven approach. And then modular automation framework is like where essentially we would be building a project object model. We are going to put a proper framework to it, and then the test script is separate, the test cases or test data is separate, the test identifying the elements of a form is different. So we'll be putting a proper modular approach in case of the modular automation testing. And then we will be using the hybrid automation framework, like where we'll be using data-driven plus modular, or maybe data-driven keyword plus modular, like this. So we may be using the what you can call it as the hybrid automation framework. So these are the different frameworks which people would be using typically when we are going with the automation. And the best practices are like once we start going for the automation, we have to understand which is the tool which works for us. And then we need to start with the POC and see how work on a particular POC and see how what are the things we wanted to cover, whether it is we can be able to cover and all those things. Then start using a particular framework, and then finally we have to measure the metrics in terms of the defects and other things. Whatever you do manually also can be able to do the same thing with the automation tools. And when you start the automation from the company perspective or from the project perspective, those are all project managers and all, initially like the cost would be high once we start, and the profit would be less. But as the time as we go with implementing this in different projects, multiple projects, so there you will get a break even. And then once your team is like having good skilled automation tester, then you can go ahead with implementing this for many projects, and then automatically the profit will increase. So initially there will be a lot of investment, and then once we go further into executing many projects, then obviously there will be break even. So coming to the different types of testing can be automated, be it smoke testing, unit testing, integration testing, functional testing, keyword testing, regression testing, data-driven testing, block box testing, different things. So mostly here we are concerned more about the functional testing or the regression testing. So where we wanted to do the automation. And when it comes to the tool selection, so there are different tools available. And again, as I said in the beginning, like we are working on the agile environment where we have to, where the testing team and the everyone, like the testing team, development team, design team, part of every iteration, and it is part of the entire process of taking the requirements, designing, and then developing the particular use case, and then testing, and then acceptance testing, and then the deployment. So as we go with this continuous, what you can call it as the automation, so it's very much essential. The testing team should be part of it, and they will see the requirements. They start understanding the requirement. They start writing the test script, right? So very much they are from the beginning of the process or beginning of the development. It's not like at the end they come and they execute it. So then it's really difficult. So this is where the continuous testing would help us. And coming to the different tools available, so we have different tools. So if you look at the different tools available, so we have tools like Selenium, Kotlin, and then Unified Functional Testing, Test Complete, SOAP UI, and then Rationals. There are some commercial, there are some what you can call it as non-commercial software. Some softwares are used for load testing or API testing like Postman and then Apache JMeter. So from the perspective of the automation testing, quite a lot of people or quite a lot of companies use Selenium. One is it is a open source. You can easily download and you can use it. And the Selenium actually this is implemented using different programming languages. That means if you know Java, you can use Java plus Selenium. If you know Python plus Selenium. And some companies like maybe development they are doing in a particular programming language. So if they want to do the testing, they also want to take the same programming language for testing also. So it supports different programming language, even it supports the JavaScript also. So that's why depending on the skill set, available skill set, and depending on the long-term vision of the company, they can use any of the programming language. So at least you should be good in any one of the programming language. But most of the time, the Java is preferred at this point in time. Now Python is also picking up. So when we say Selenium, mostly the people are using Java Selenium or Python Selenium. And Selenium itself has a lot of libraries in it or a lot of components in it. And it is used in along with the frameworks like JUnit or TestNG. So that is for the testing, unit testing, and also TestNG is good for generating the reports and all. So you can execute multiple tests at the same time. And actually, you have different ways of identifying the form elements like ID, name, XPath, and all. And it can work with other third-party jars and all. So as it is open source and it is freeware, and then a lot of materials are available, people are typically using the Selenium. Followed by like QTP you have. So at this point in time, I'm not discussing more about it because I'm just talking more about the Selenium, and then the rational functional tester. So there are different testing tools available. So comparing, like just a comparison, like it's available since 2004, and it's used for the testing the web application, and it's free, and it works on different operating system, different platforms. And the scripting languages, you can use different scripting like Java, C#, or Perl, Python, or JavaScript, PHP, and all. And bit of advanced programming skills is required because it is not like record and play kind of a thing. And installation is okay, fine. Like if you know bit of programming, then it would be easy. So bit of high level skill is required when you want to get into the test automation using the Selenium, right? And when I say Selenium, it has many components. It has 4 components typically. One is called as the ID, Integrated Development Environment, and then the remote control, and then WebDriver, and then Selenium Grid. So these are the different components. So earlier we were using what is called as an integrated development environment, IDE, which comes like a plugin to the Firefox, and then we used to record and play. Suppose I want to do a automation of some module, suppose I register and then I log in and log out. So those processes can be actually recorded and then it could be played. Earlier they were using it, but a lot of pitfall in that. So that's why nowadays not much thing is happening in that particular front, but still there may be a few plugins again available. But what we would be mainly working on is on the WebDriver and then the Selenium grid. So Selenium grid is basically used for like at the same time you want to multiple testing at the same time, that maybe multi-browser testing, multi-operating system at the same time, then we will be using what is called as the Selenium grid. And Selenium WebDriver is the one which you would be working on when you will be having drivers for different browsers, and we would be using those drivers, and we would be writing the script, and that script would be executed using the browsers, using these drivers. So whenever I say we are learning Selenium, basically we should be know like how to run it on different browsers and then how to use the different drivers, and probably on the Selenium grid if that is the requirement. And there are different versions at this point in time. We have like version 3, then we have like RC WebDriver and the Selenium grid. And this is what is the Selenium grid. Earlier, like this remote control where we wanted to execute the script on a browser. Okay, so that was a different, we were using earlier different server. Now both of them are merged together in the form of a WebDriver. And this is where we would be using the Selenium. And this is the guy who has started this Selenium, and he is from ThoughtWorks. So he was asked to do a lot of testing, manual testing on a web application. Then he thought like it's too boring and too laborious. Then he started by writing the JavaScript, which would help to control the browser action. So basically we want to control the browser action. So this is where it started, and his name is Jason Huggins. And then after that, he has whatever he has written, and he given it to the community, and it's called as the Selenium core, and the things were developed on top of it. And there is something called same origin policy. Like suppose if I want to execute a script on a machine or of a different domain on the server, then there was a problem that is called as the it was prohibiting what is called as the same origin policy. Means suppose I'm automating, I'm having a server and I want to automate the script of say Amazon. So it was not possible earlier. Now we are going to play a trick as if from the same domain, as if it looks like I'm running it on the same domain. So that is what we call it as the same origin policy. So it's JavaScript program can only access the pages of the same domain where it belongs to. It cannot access the pages from the different domain. So that is where this was a challenge, and then it was taken over by using the WebDriver and in the RC. Okay, so this is how it has started. And when we are writing the script, basically the script is written, and then we use a WebDriver, and then we will be executing the script on the browser, and then we would be getting the result. So this is what happens. Is RC and the browser. So there's a handshake, and then we would be executing the script. Okay, so this is what typically we will be using. And then the Selenium grid was developed by another person, this Patrick Lightbody. So he has come up with what is called as the Selenium grid. So Selenium grid is something like what you can call it as hub and spoke model. That means I want to run the scripts on different operating system, which is geographically maybe at a different position, but which is part of the same network. So where one machine may be using a different operating system, another may be using different operating system, and they may be running on different browsers. So if that is a requirement when we want to test it, then what we can do is we can load all the test script at a hub, which is the central point, and then that internally we'll run it on the different nodes. So this is what we call it as the Selenium grid. So where in which we can at the same time we can do multi-browser testing and also running the script on the different operating systems. So this is what is called as the Selenium grid. So this may be required like when you want your requirement says your application should be running on different browsers, maybe Chrome, maybe Safari, maybe Mozilla and all, right? So if you do manually, like first what we do usually, either you have to put different people for doing all those things, or if you are the alone person who is doing this, then you have to complete on Chrome, then on the other browsers. So that is to become really tedious. So at the same time, you wanted to run the script, then and also control all the operation through a central hub. That is where we would be using what is called as the Selenium grid. So these are the different components of the what you can call it as uh, the Selenium. So namely the what you can call it as the first one is the driver and the remote control and the RC and the Selenium grid. Okay, so this is what we would be using. So now in next few minutes, like 15 to 20 minutes, I will demonstrate like how do you set up an environment and how do you write small script and execute a small use case. Okay. So the first thing what we have to do is what are the things required when you want to. So first is if we are working on the Java, so we need JDK, Java Development Kit. So we have to download the JDK. So here you can use JDK 1.8 or any other version. And then you need a IDE, integrated development environment. So which is here I would be using Eclipse, right? This is required. And then we need the Selenium software, right? Selenium software, depending on whether you are using the Selenium, whether you are using C++ or whether you're using C# and all. So this is the website where you can go and you can download the Selenium software. So this is selenium.dev.downloads where you can download the Selenium software. So if we go there, so depending on the different ones, suppose if you want Java, you can go and download the Java version. If you are working, if you want to work with the C# or if you want to work with the Ruby or Python or JavaScript, you can download this. So the first is we have to download the Selenium, what you can call it as the software. So when you download it, it will come like a jar, and then we have to configure the jar in our. So suppose now I downloaded this. This is Selenium Java 4, and then Selenium Java 4. So this is what will be there. So this is what we will be using. Say already I downloaded some of the software here. So the one is the Selenium. This is the one, and second one is what we want to download is the jars, I mean the drivers. So drivers, based on whether you wanted to run it on a Chrome browser or whether you want to run it on what you can call it as the Mozilla or like say Safari or anything, you need the drivers. So that is the second thing. So the first is the software for this thing. So that is the Selenium software. Selenium. Okay, so that you can download from this particular website, as I mentioned, depending on what programming language you will be using. Okay, so this is what, and the next one is the drivers. Suppose if I want to download a Chrome driver, so then you have to download the Chrome driver. So for Windows, I'm using the Windows operating system. You can go here and then you can download the Chrome driver. Okay, so this is what is the thing we have to download. So these are the things which we have to download. So once we download this, then we can create, like we can use the Eclipse, and then we can create a what you can call it as a regular Java project. So we can create a Java project. So because just I'm doing it for 1 hour, so already I created the project. Just I will show you few of the things. So first thing is we have to create a in the Eclipse we have to create a Java project. So you can say file new and then Java project, regular Java project you can create. So this is the Java project you can create. I already created a project. So once you create a project, what you have to do is you have to import these libraries. You import these libraries, you have to import the libraries. So how do we import the libraries is like, so this project I already created. So now if I say right click on this, and then properties, build path. See, these are the jars. See, whatever the jars I downloaded, I put it into a folder. So this is the folder I actually unzipped these libraries, whatever I have downloaded. So just I will show you. So these are the libraries. So I created a folder called libraries. See, whatever the Selenium I downloaded, all these jars are here. Okay, these are the jars which are required. This I have downloaded. So what we have to do is we have to take this and then put it in the build path. Okay, this is what libraries we have to add this in the build path. So these are all required. These are the libraries, and whichever are required, you can only consider that. Just have added all the different libraries which we have downloaded. So this is the next thing we have to do. So once we have done that, the thing is like next thing is we have to place the driver, that is the Chrome driver which we have downloaded in a particular folder. So I have placed the Chrome driver which I downloaded in a folder. So this is where actually I downloaded the drivers. Okay, so this is the driver, Chrome driver, I have put it. Now let us start with the hello world of what you can call it as the Selenium. So what we are going to do, let us see. The first is like this particular program, it's going, what it is going to do, it is going to open the Covin web page, right? This is a Covin web page. It is going to open this page. It's going to open the Covin web page. So this page we are going to open it. We are going to open it programmatically using the Selenium. So what is the steps here? The first is we are going to write a Java program, and this I called it as Open Chrome Browser -1. And you know, in Java, the starting point is like public static void main. First is we have to register the driver. In a sense, we have to say, where is my driver? So there is a system.set property, WebDriver.chrome.driver. It is in my location. So this is the driver. That means it is as if it is like opening the Chrome browser and then executing the script. In order to open the Chrome browser, we need the Chrome executable, right? This is what we downloaded. So this is what we download, and then we have to now create the what you can call it as the instance of the Chrome driver. So we will say Chrome driver is equal to new driver, and this is the driver. This is, we call it as the interface, and this is the implementation. We are going to get the executor, I mean the instance of the Chrome driver, and then there is something called driver.get. So which page we want to open? So we have to put this URL, the driver.get, and then the next what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the title. Suppose when you open any page, you know, like there is something called title. When you go up here, the small window, this is the title. So what this program I'm going to do is just I'm going to open this page. I'm going to open this page and then get the title of the page programmatically. And just if you want, you can close it and just print it. So this is what is the first program. Like you can say it is like a hello world of the Selenium. So you can execute it like a regular Java program. Let me run it. See, once I run it, so it starts loading the Chrome driver, use the Chrome driver. It opens a window like this. Okay, and then it is going to open this page. And if you look at the console, it has type title COVID. So you can open any page. You can open Google, or you can open any page for that matter, and then you can do it. So this is the first program, like Hello World. So there are few things which are common. The first is like the library, I mean the driver. The second is the instantiating the driver. Okay, so it simulates the way we open a driver, open a browser, and then type this covin.go.in.home. This is what it is going to simulate. Okay, so this is the first program. So let me just see the second program. Okay, the second program, again, it is I'm not sure whether it has changed or something like this. So when I go to this particular dashboard, there will be state. I wanted to look at the report based on the state. That's what I wanted to do. So let me first open this particular page. Yeah, it is the page. This is the page. This is dashboard. And there are different states are there. See, I wanted to look at the state of, say, some Karnataka or Telangana. I want to look at the state of Telangana or Andhra or anything. So when I select that particular state, that particular report should come, right? So this is what we would be getting. So now how to do it automatically? How to do the automation? Like I have to open the page. I have to look at this particular drop down, and then I have to select that particular state so that I can get the report. So that is what we are going to do, the second program. So second program is this. So when I run this program, there are few more things we have to do here. Again, the first two steps are same. Second one is I'm maximizing the window. When I open it, I'm maximizing the window. The third step is to get this thing. And then here, I have to get I have to like, as if like I have to select like manually. What I do, I go to a drop down and then I select the state. Now here, what I have to do is, how can I set a state programmatically? For that, we will be using different classes, which is provided by the Selenium. So there is something called driver.getElementById. by ID. So again, in order to learn like test automation, you need to know bit of HTML, CSS, JavaScript. So that is required. Along with that, the knowledge one is, if you are using Java, you should know Java, or if you are using Python, you should know Python. And then bit of HTML, CSS, JavaScript is required. So because some of the websites are developed maybe in a complex way, it's not so easy to do that. So that is where we need much more knowledge about the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So first let me run it, and then I will explain like how are we going to get this. So let me run this. So it opens this, maximizes, and then you can see it's going to set the state as Telangana. See here, it has set the status as Telangana. Now the question is, how can I get this? So that is where we have locators. We have different locators. So this is called as the ID locator. So we should know more about the locators. So first let us see the ID locator. Before getting the ID locator, let us see how this page is developed. So in order to know this element, we have to actually grab this element, right click on this, and then inspect. Right click and inspect. Then what you have to do is, there is a small window will come. This window you can move it on to this. And then this is exactly the code of the select. So this is what developer has used to develop this. Here, see, you can see here, there is something called ID, something called class. In order to locate this, it is like searching. It is like searching this particular element or in this entire page. How can I search it? In order to search it, you have to uniquely identify that particular element. In order to uniquely identify that particular element, you have to use these things, either ID, name. See here, there is an ID name. So you can right click onto it and then copy, and then the copy element. So with that, like how these people have developed this. So developer has developed this. See, when they have developed this, in order to uniquely identify, either you can use the name, or you can use the ID, or you can use the class, or you can use what you can call it, a CSS selector, XPath. There are different kinds of the what you can call it as the selectors. And this is first thing. So what I am trying to say here is, look, find that element having the ID state, then it gets that element. Then I'm going to convert into a select class. I mean, I'm going to create a select object. That means it is representing the drop down. In that, I want to set Telangana. How can I set Telangana? Now I set the value as 32. So now where is 32? You can search here 32. See this value, that the options, the Telangana's value is 32. Okay, if some other state, you can either give Telangana or you can give the value also. Usually we will give the value, because if it is a multilingual, so this may be, this is in English now. Suppose it may be in some other language, so that's why you can give the value. So this kind of knowledge is also required, like how the developer has used to develop this. So that knowledge is required when you are going for automation. So this is the one thing you have to do. This is how we call it as a selector. So this is by ID selector we are going to use. Similarly, you can use different kinds of selectors. Okay, hope you are able to follow this. Okay, so this is what we will be using. And then let us go for some other thing. The next thing is, like, suppose I want to do a registration. So I want to do a registration of this page. So I have one, this is an education platform called HireScript. Suppose I want to automate the registration process. This process, I want to automate the registration, right? I want to automate the registration where I have to provide all this information, first name, last name, email, phone, college, and all those things, right? So how can we go about doing this? Okay, so that is what we would be looking at, and how do we use this? Right? So this is where we need the knowledge again of the HTML, CSS, JavaScript. So those knowledge is required, because we wanted to see if we identify the elements properly, half of the work is done. So half of the work is done if we are able to identify the web page, web elements, and then, so that is where the challenge is. So again, we can go here. Here I am using different what you can call it as the selectors. I am using an ID selector, the first name. Send keys means I wanted to enter some data. I wanted to enter some data. So this data now currently it is hard coded. When you are using a data driven, this data can be read from a Excel file or from a CSV file. Okay. So this is where we are going to put it: first name, last name, email, phone. Okay, and then the registered password and all those things using different ID, I mean the locator. See here I am using ID, name, locator, X path. There is something called XML path. So this is like the path from the, it could be a relative path or it could be path from the root element. So where we wanted to identify a particular thing. So I have used different element locator technique to identify this, and also there are so many functionalities here. One is called as send keys, and then the click, like to simulate the button click and all. Okay, so this is what we have. Let me run it just to tell you like how you can go about doing this. Okay, see here, it is even done that, and also we are doing the login. Okay, so this is how you can check it. So invalid login credential, because I had given the what you can call it as the email, as here at the time registered I said 126, and here it is I am saying 125. So that's why it is telling the invalid credentials. So like this, what we can do is we can automate. So we can automate different things. So in this page, we have automated like enrolling for a course, and then even looking at the different videos and things like that, so that you can start automating one by one. So just to conclude, just to give an idea about like how to go about the automation, what are the things required. That is the purpose. We have organized skill. Upright is organized this particular webinar. So hope you got some idea about what is test automation, what are the things required for doing the test automation. So many of the companies, as you know, like going for the automation, and the main things required for you is to learn a programming language, be it Java or Python, and then bit of HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and then yeah, that's it. And also the libraries. I mean that there are so many APIs associated with what you can call it as the associated with the Selenium. That's what you have to do. And slowly once you start working on that, then you would be getting this. Okay, so you would be understanding like how you will be using this, and then with the experience slowly you can do the automation. And actually automation is, I would not say that it's very simple. It's at the same time not very complex also, but but like with the experience, I think slowly once you start automating, and nowadays there are a lot of free projects available which you can automate. You can go about taking up any project and then automate it, and then your confidence level will increase. Okay, so with that, let me conclude today's session. Hope it was useful at least to get to know what exactly is the Selenium. So this is what I thought. Let me put across, and these are the things I try to cover. So the introduction, and then Selenium as a tool, and then the building blocks, setting up the environment, and then test script, and then the locators and some sample programs and the use cases. Okay, so if any specific questions or anything is there, feel free to put it across so that I should be able to answer it. Okay, so thanks for attending today's session. Hope it was useful. So appreciate your feedback. which is appropriate to select ID or XPath, and which selector need to be prioritized. There is nothing like prioritizing that thing. So ID, there is a, sometimes it is very typical, like some of the applications, there is a question from Jaya Verma, which one to use. Sometimes what happens, like some of the websites are dynamically generating the IDs and all. So if it is dynamically generating, for example, Facebook or anything, they're dynamically generating. So if it is dynamically generated, it may work when you run the script. Next time when you run it, then it won't. Okay. So from that perspective, the easy way is like ID or name, but it should be unique. Other than that, you can go with XPath or CSS selector. CSS selector is also much more preferred one. But you should be very careful when you are selecting ID or name. Only thing is, if it is dynamic, it may run at this moment, and the next moment it may not be able to do it. Okay. Yeah, this session is for Java Selenium. Yes. So there is a question like, is has the capability to fill the captcha values on form submission? I think there is some challenge, not so easy. So to fill the captcha values. Yeah, is the ID unique across the web pages? Yes. There is a question from Parth. Yes, it should be unique across the. Otherwise, it will stop at the. It will pick the first one. Can we have the Python based code explanation at this point in time? This was for Java Selenium. In future, if we organize on the Python, definitely I would like to take it up. At this point in time, this we have done for the Java Selenium. What is the? There are some questions. Okay. So Chrome driver is equal to new driver. So what is the meaning of WebDriver is equal to driver? So this is the concept of Java interface and implementation. So WebDriver is an interface, Chrome driver is an implementation. Okay, so WebDriver is the interface and the Chrome driver is the implementation. So you can use different implementations. See now, if I want to use the Chrome, that's fine. If I want to use the what you can call it as the Mozilla, then it is a different thing. Okay, so the interface may be the same. You go for the different implementation. Then only you have to change the implementation. So the meaning of Chrome driver is equal to WebDriver is equal to new Chrome driver is. So I'm invoking the Chrome driver. I'm creating the object of the Chrome driver, and we are going to access it using the what you can call it as the interface. Okay. So hope I'm able to address few of the questions. Can we have the PPT? I think you have to check. I think you will be getting the what you can call as the recording. I think they have recorded. They would be getting the recording, and that you can watch. Okay. Again, thanks. Which language is easy to learn? From the language perspective, if you are learning new, I think the Python is the one which is much more easy. You can get the recordings, Manoj, not the PPT. I think you can get the recordings. Okay, so thanks. I think I have addressed most of the questions. Thanks once again. Okay. Thanks for the feedback. Okay, so with that, let me just hang up this.